Greetings and good evening. My name is Nancy Victor Green, and I am the president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Incorporated, Manhattan chapter. On behalf of our board of directors and members, I welcome you to our program this evening, Rep Your Brand, Building and Protecting Your Personal Brand as a Tool for Success. And I am the president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Incorporated this evening. Something just repeated back to me. I'm going to continue. I want to thank the New York Urban League for partnering with us for this important conversation this evening. I'm very excited about seeing and hearing our guest speakers, as well as the young sisters that are part of our Youth Leadership Apprentice program. The National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Incorporated is a 40-year-old advocacy organization whose vision is that Black women and girls will live in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist. We advocate on behalf of Black women and girls to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. The Manhattan chapter was chartered in 1992, and we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. I now would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Malika Elwin, who is our Education Committee co-chair. Malika is a successful attorney, advocate, and leader with over 20 years of professional experience in the public sector. She managed an integrated team of instructional, student services, and operational staff that served 30+ New York City high schools. In her current position, she provides programmatic and policy support to the Bronx High School superintendent, and helps to establish and maintain a culture focused on student achievement, leadership, teacher development, collaboration, and comprehensive use of data to improve outcomes for all students. She holds a Juris Doctorate from Albany Law School and a Bachelor of Arts in the Political Science and African American Studies from the University of Michigan. I am proud to hand off this program to Malika Elwin.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you here. And I also want to welcome our Youth Leadership Apprentice, which is a mentorship program that the Education Committee is running this year. And we're so excited to have them on. And I'm going to turn it over to Anya Dean, who is one of our Youth Leadership Apprentice.
Good evening, my name is Anya Dean, and I'm a Youth Leadership Apprentice with NCBW 100 Manhattan. I'm from the Bronx, New York, and I'm a high school senior at Bronxville High School. I'd like to introduce you to our three esteemed panelists. First, Jabari Osaze, who has studied ancient Africa for over 30 years, focusing primarily on Egyptian history and spirituality. His popular monthly historical museum tours have included the world-renowned Egyptian and African collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum, and the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. The consummate historian/priest and the certified life coach, Mr. Osaze, teaches a variety of courses on ancient African history and lectures on a wide variety of historical and motivational topics. Mr. Osaze was named one of the most influential religious leaders in New York City by New York Magazine. He is the author of 7 Little White Lies, The Conspiracy to Destroy the Black Self-Image. He is a proud resident of the village of Harlem, New York. Next, we have Ashley M. Scott, who is an award-winning data professional at Fortune 500, career coach, data analytics instructor, and recipient of the President's Volunteer Service Award from former President Barack Obama. She is best known for sharing her blend of experience with organizations such as Olay, IBM Developer, and Google to encourage and champion the diversification of the talent pipeline in technology and data careers. Ms. Scott's honors extend beyond community service to social entrepreneurship, seen in her #DataGirl social media campaign. The campaign reached international recognition and motivated her to create a data-inspired apparel and accessories collection and her DataGirl scholarship in partnership with the New York Urban League. Ms. Scott is passionate about demonstrating that there is room for more people to thrive in her online platform, DataGirl Ash, where she provides insights to people interested in using data while uplifting others to successful career pathways. Ms. Scott has trained over 100 people across 10 plus states and 3 plus countries in backgrounds ranging from healthcare, education, and business. Lastly, we have Damon Stubbs as a senior accountant manager at Attune, an insurance tech startup firm based in New York City. Damon deepens critical relationships, drives revenues, and helps connect his clients to small commercial insurance solutions. It was not his math that afforded him career progression, but his grasp on the art of storytelling. Damon's passion for his faith and community keeps him busy. He's a former executive team member of the New York Urban League Young Professionals and the founder of Conscious in Pentecost, a multi-platform faith and justice initiative. NCBW 100 Manhattan welcomes you all.
Thank you, Anya. I appreciate it. So I want to give you just a little bit of background and framing for tonight's program. So this program, Rep Your Brand, is about how we, and specifically young people, can use social media to create and curate their own personal brand that can help them in whatever path they decide to take in life, in their career path, in their college path, whatever career path that they have in life, how this social media that we all use, that has dominated a lot of our lives, can be used in a positive way while avoiding some of the pitfalls. So this evening, we're going to talk about a personal brand. We're going to talk about some of the pitfalls, and we're going to give you some ideas about how you, and especially our youth, can create a personal brand that takes you throughout your life. So one of the first questions that we have, and I'm going to ask this question of Ashley, is what is a personal brand?
When I think about a personal brand, I think about what allows you to showcase your authentic self in a way that you can do so in multiple platforms. And we all have something unique to bring to the table. And knowing that we have the ability to own our own narrative and help to introduce ourselves from a different scope of lens, if you will, online, or whether that's through creating our social media presence, allows us to be the creator and to curate the information that we want to highlight, whether it's the things that have been our peaks in our day, or maybe not the most happiest moments of our day, but allowing people to be part of that journey with you. And also being able to be a community leader and a change maker as well. And those are some of the things that I think about when I'm interested in trying to advocate to people when creating their own personal brand.
Damon, how have you curated your social media brand?
Well, I wanted to make sure first, as a fintech professional and as a faith leader, I want to make sure that I'm putting messaging on my social media that is consistent to pretty much where I want to go and what message and what kind of influence I want to draw on in real life per se. So if there are certain relationships I really want to dig into, certain opportunities I really want to maximize, I want to make sure that my storytelling is consistent with that. I want to make sure that I'm sharing things that is consistent with that. So I'm really thinking about the information strategically that I'm putting on my social media, the connections I'm making, the statuses I'm posting. A lot of times in this day and age, I know it's very easy to get trigger fingers, and just tweet whatever we want real quick. But I've learned to really take a breath and think about, is what I'm about to post or tweet or put on my story, is it consistent with the type of messaging that I want my brand to have? And so that's really where I start when we're talking about curating my social media page. So.
Jabari, have you ever put something on social media that you regret?
I think that if I could answer no, that would mean that I've never used social media. I have been in the situation where I've had to, in some ways, live two different lives, right? I used to, in fact, thank you to the New York Urban League, I used to actually be a vice president for programs at the New York Urban League. It was an important place for me. I really loved being there. But when I left the Urban League, my career took a very different path. I'd always had a passion for history and lecturing, and that's the direction I went in. But for some time, and occasionally still, I say, well, which Jabari Osaze am I promoting? The Jabari Osaze that's doing corporate and union and nonprofit workshops, or the Jabari Osaze that's speaking to a very specific audience about history? And so sometimes you can get spillover, right? There's some folks who might be upset with something I've said. I don't think that they should be, but they do get sometimes upset with something I said, and they sometimes try to attack me. I've actually apologized online before and said, you know, I was offended by what you said. Maybe I could have handled this differently. And that happens. But I will say that as long as we think of ourselves online as in some ways separate and distinct from the real flesh person that is here, then we can think, am I actually creating the entity online that looks like the entity that I want to exist in the business world, in the professional world, in those sorts of things? Sometimes people laugh at me because I'll say, is that good for Jabari Osaze? And my sister always says, you're speaking in the third person again. And what I'm really saying is it not good for your brother Jabari Osaze, but the brand who is Jabari Osaze? If you see those things as distinct, it is sometimes easier to recognize that there's some different steps you have to take online than when you're doing things in the real world.
Regan, do you have a question for the panelists?
Good evening. My name is Regan Baker, and I am a youth leadership appreciate with NBC NCBW 100 Manhattan. I'm in the 8th grade. Mr. Osaze, how can students use social media platforms in different ways to emphasize skills and interests?
I think that the concept of repping your brand, I love the title of this workshop, is so important, because we have to recognize that as we're cultivating a public image, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want that brand to become? And so for many of you, you're in 8th grade. I remember 8th grade. It seems a lot sooner, more recent than it actually was, but I remember that time when I was trying to figure out who I was trying to be. You need to ask yourself, are the things that I'm doing online consistent with the direction I want to go in? And that is a question that anyone at any age really should be asking. And so I'm really hoping that the message that the young people, the youth, the young ladies particularly here tonight is that you can control the image that you're presenting, and that the best way to control that image is to think about where this person, who you are, this brand is supposed to go. If the things you want to do are the things that I'm doing consistent with the direction I'm going in. And that's probably the thing that you should think of. Remember, any tool when misused can be dangerous. Any tool when misused can be dangerous. But if you use a tool effectively, you can get a lot of work done.
So Ashley, when we're thinking about building a brand, we're thinking about building a brand in terms of how our young people, our youth can build a brand. We know that they're on not as much Facebook anymore because that's a little lame now, but they are on Instagram and they're making TikTok videos and they're heavily putting themselves out there, you know, on the internet and creating content. So when we're thinking about curating and creating a brand for young people, what are your suggestions?
I think that's a great question. And also thinking about what your long-term goals are. What do you want to be known for? You have an idea of what you're doing now. And sometimes we think about, where do we want to be 2 years, 3 years from now? And even if you don't know the exact answer right now, you can always think about what makes you happy, or what are your passions, what are your hobbies, and also elaborate, share a little bit more of your story. If, for example, you like to do hair, or you find that you're really good with numbers, right? You can showcase some of these skills online, build a following, a community or tribe of people to support you, and you'll be able to see how you can kind of level up in your brand, or you can think about different ways that you can monetize it on social media platforms. We do see now that there are a number of opportunities where people are now called influencers, and they can use their voice or advocate something that is important to them or their community and be a liaison for things that we may not know if we're not in the grassroots with certain individuals. So when I think about the different ways that we can use social media platforms to elevate our brand, and also thinking about how we can showcase our message, something that was very important to me was to advocate the importance of data literacy to people. And I understood their pain points, especially when thinking of my own journey to becoming a data professional, and feeling like there was a lack of representation. Using or being able to utilize social media platforms strategically can allow you to connect with more people. And something that was important to me was to also build awareness. So, for example, one of the shirts that I'm wearing now says Data Girl. And when people see my Data Girl shirt, so they see my platform, as one of our panelists had agreed to say, that it is consistent with what they do and what they say.
So Damon, just turning the question a little bit and thinking about representation in our true authentic self, right? And so, as people, as humans, we all don't think alike, right? And there's a lot of political discourse now around what is being put out on social media. There is discourse around the vaccine mandates and masks and COVID-19, and there's discourse around race and ethnicity, right? So when we're thinking about representation and we're thinking about the positive image that we want to put on social media, but also thinking about who we are authentically, have you ever had any push and pull around the things that you're posting as Damon, right? Or as opposed to your brand, right? Because sometimes that may be in conflict, and how do you resolve that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, while I'm very serious about protecting my brand and protecting, for example, I'm in financial services, that's a particular type of brand, a lot of times a very conservative type of brand, a brand that doesn't want to offend too many people because it's very relational and client driven. And so that brand is very touchy. But I've also learned that I'm Damon. And at the end of the day, I kind of didn't have to choose, but there were tasteful ways I could express myself in a way that people can say, you know what, I may disagree with you, but I wasn't crass. I wasn't, I didn't use language that could have offended someone. I think there is a way, and there have been times, especially in this critical day that we're living in regards to issues regarding justice and community issues. At the end of the day, I am who I am. And I have a choice to also hopefully have employers and networks that also understand I am who I am, and that I also have a responsibility to speak up in times that are critical, even when it may create some tension. But how I do a thing was very important and something I had to think about. I'm very serious about remaining authentic to who I am. Damon, the senior account manager, fine, that's a brand. But at the end of the day, I am who I am. And I think there's a way to merge those in a way to ensure that you're doing it, you're putting information out there in a respectful manner, in a tasteful manner, in a manner that you're not trying to get agreement with everyone, but at least you give someone a chance to see your side in a way that is clear, in a way that is creative. And I think that's just very important. So that's really the way I've balanced it. It comes up a whole lot. The fields I've worked in is very white male dominated. And unfortunately, it comes with one sometimes narrow view of the world, with a focus on money and revenue, and those things are important. But at the end of the day, you are who you are. And I encourage every young person, be your authentic self. because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. And that's what's going to last. That's what's going to stand at the end of the day. And I've learned I couldn't drive myself crazy going back and forth, putting on different masks. No, the brand I want people to know is that Damon is authentic. Damon is who he is. He can get the job done, but he also has views that he's passionate about. And that is something that's important. It's important for me, for them to know that, and to not to accept my view, but to accept my passion for those views, and that I am adult enough and professional enough to handle myself in a way to understand that there's a time and a place for that. So let me do me, and I'll continue to do the job. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Victoria, did you have a question for the panel? Victoria, did you have a question for the panelists?
Yes, good evening. My name is Victoria Cody. I am a youth leadership apprentice with NCBW 100 Manhattan. I'm in 8th grade. Mr. Ozazi, how can students use personal branding to build key relationships?
I think that's a really good question, but I want to take a quick second to just say that if we were literally in a physical room, I'd be fist bumping Damon right now, because the way he described how he has to navigate two worlds is exactly some of the challenge I have. Now, I'm a Kemetic ancient Egyptian priest. So not only am I a spiritual person, and sometimes spirituality can be a lightning rod, a third rail, but my spirituality is unusual to many people. So I have actually, as a consultant, sometimes lost jobs because of my spiritual tradition. They don't say it that way, but when I actually investigate a little bit, I realized they looked at a picture of me. I have a strange hat on with a symbol on it. And they're like, oh boy, too conservative for this environment. He's not conservative enough for this environment. And so I really want to chime in and say that I liked his answer so much, because there is a challenge. Now, with regard to actually struggling with that, because I also think young people need to hear that even us adults, yes, some of us who don't have hair on our head anymore, struggle with those things. At the beginning of the pandemic, I got the coronavirus, and I wasn't going to say anything. I'm talking about the very beginning. Like 2 days after the world shut down, I was sick. And I actually wasn't going to say anything. And then someone on social media said that I was sick. So I said, I need to say something. When I did, I got attacked. Can you imagine being extremely sick? And I was very sick and getting attacked, people saying I lied about having the coronavirus, all on social media. To this day, there are about 24 videos saying that I lied. I want that to settle in for a second. So I want you to understand that as we talk about some of the best practices, it's not always easy. Sometimes you have to navigate some challenging waters. And I want to say, young people, it is going to be so important for you to say, who am I? What brand am I building? And is my response going to take me away from building this brand? Now, I know that some of you are probably too young to have had a Tamagotchi, or maybe someone who had tried to create actually create a world for your Sims character. But I like to liken it that way in some ways. Just imagine you're trying to keep a digital pet alive. And you know, it's a digital pet. It's not in the real world, but you have to feed it, you have to walk it, you have to give it water, you know, those things that we used to do. And sometimes some of you are still doing as the metaverse becomes more popular again. In some ways, that little pet is your brand. Are you keeping the pet alive with the things that you're feeding it? Or are you simply letting it grow fallow and die? So those are the things that you have to consider. Does my social media presence advance what I'm trying to do? That doesn't mean you can't have fun. It doesn't mean you can't have a personal life. But it does mean that you have to consider what you put online and how you put it online. I have several colleagues now who actually have more than one social media presence. I have a really good friend who I went to college with who works for a very large, I'm not going to say his name, so I might as well say who he works for, who works for Target. And at one point I saw him, and he's really high up at Target, and he was telling me everything about my life. And I said, brother, I have not seen you in about 10 years. He said, I follow you on social media. I said, no, you do not, because we're close enough that if you were following me, I would know. He said, oh, my name is whatever. I was like, that is not even close to your name. He was like, that's the point. So he has that face that is Target approved, and he has a whole other face for the stuff that he wants to do in his personal life. I'm not saying that in junior high school or high school, that's something you should consider. But I do want you to think about the fact that you can live a real world and a real life in the real world and have all the fun and do the things you really want to do, and think about how you translate that in the social media environment. And that's going to be really important.
Thank you. Ashley, I wanted to pivot just a little bit and think and talk about social media with respect to Black women and their brands, and how that may be a little different in the building, in the maintaining, because we've heard from Damon and we've heard from Jabari, but thinking about this in respect to Black women and Black girls, do you feel that it's a difference? I think there's a difference with the branding, the maintaining, and you've definitely had experience as a Black woman. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, so in my personal experience, I've noticed that some of the things that I have posted or tried to educate my audience on, sometimes they may or may not understand fully what I'm talking about. So for example, I did a campaign with Olay, and we had talked about decoding the bias, right? And oftentimes we found that when people had searched, for example, beautiful skin or anything related to fashion or beauty, the search engine did not result in pictures that look like them, right? And that gave us the indication that oftentimes in certain industries, women of color are not represented. And oftentimes we don't have the higher up positions in these industries as well. So using my platform to talk about and also uplift people to say that there are opportunities in STEM careers, STEM being the acronym for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that yes, there are a lot of jobs, or there are increasing number of jobs in the STEM field. However, women of color have reported that they don't feel supported, that they don't see someone that looks like them, shares their similar experience. And oftentimes when it comes down to advancing in an educational degree, they may not oftentimes get certain sponsorships, not to say it's because of the color of their skin, but in terms of not knowing or having access to certain materials that other groups may or may not have. So when I had tried to educate my audience about that, it was very eye-opening to them. And even when I shared my experience about being a data analytics instructor, sometimes people were surprised that I was the instructor, someone who is a woman of color, someone who is young. And I recently launched my Data Girl Scholarship. And one of the scholarship recipients had reported that she was the only woman of color in her computer science class. So using her platform on social media to advocate that these opportunities are available, but oftentimes the people that are in the field are largely male dominated. So coming from the perspective of a woman and a person of color gives them a very different perspective of what that experience looks like. If you could imagine going into a new experience, whether it's college or trying to take a coding or advanced type of class and not feeling that you have that support, can be a overwhelming feeling. It can be discouraging as well. But that's the power of having that personal brand, because now we have the ability to search a hashtag such as Black women of color, Black girl magic, and see all of these pictures and videos and collaborations where you don't only see one face, but you see it all across the country and all across the globe. So when I think about the experiences, while we don't have the same ones, we're not too far off from feeling like there are days when we want to do our best, but we don't feel that we're there yet. And sometimes we don't know that other people are experiencing the same things that we are. So being able to utilize social media in that way and to showcase those different faces, those different stories, actually brings us together. And there's just one step that we can all take to be a bigger picture, a bigger part of that picture, I should say.
Bria, do you have a question for the panelists? Can you come off mute?
Okay, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. So I would like to ask that
Take a breath. So why don't you do this first? Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
okay. Hi, my name is Bria Baker. I am in 8th grade, going to 9th grade, and I'm from Iceland. Do I ask any question?
You can ask any question. Yes.
Okay, so if you were stuck on an island and you have 3 things except for a boat, what would you bring?
Who are you asking that to? Anyone or the panelists?
Anyone.
Okay. Damon, can you take that question? And after you answer that question, if you were stuck on an island with no social media, can you also tackle the question about how students who have a strong presence currently on social media, how they can use that to launch themselves into a successful career?
Okay, well, first, 3 things. So with no social media, I have no internet access on this island. Oh my goodness. Okay, so first I have to bring a book. I'm a huge reader, so I have to bring some type of book. I need to read something, right? So that's number 1. Then hopefully I can bring some tea or coffee or something, get some water from the ocean, pure, something, work it that way. And then I'm also going to need at least some soap. Yeah, because, if I don't feel fresh, it's not going to be good. So that's it. I hope that answers the question. All right. A book, some soap, and some tea or coffee. Bam. Oh, man, that'd be great. So when it comes down to students, I believe you said, who already have a strong presence on social media, how can they leverage that, right?
Yes.
Okay, to really advance their brand. One, I would say, continue to put out strong content, but be a little more strategic with it, right? Meaning, what are you using in your story or on your post? Could you tag somebody that maybe you haven't thought about tagging? Not just companies, but people that you might think might be interested in the type of story that you are telling, right? I think it's very important. The way that we can really forward those brand storytelling is when other people enjoy those stories and want to share them, right? So if you already have a strong presence, why not tag that group, that organization? Don't go crazy with it, right? Have you ever seen someone who just tagged 100 people? Don't do that. Don't be too thirsty on social media, y'all. That's not good, right? Don't bother people. That's not good. I'm talking about strategically tagging people, right? Thinking through who would be interested in this. What organization, what institution, what educational program, what scholarship program, what some influencer, what brand that connects with me. So I want to be strategic with that. And I think that's important too. You already have a presence. And if you have a strong presence, people like connecting with other people on social media who have a strong presence. Nobody, now this is no shade to anybody out there with 20 followers on Twitter, but nobody wants to argue or engage somebody with 20 people. right? Because honestly, you sharing my stuff doesn't really do anything for me. But find out who can benefit. Where is there mutual benefit, right? Between me and another brand, between me and another person. If I got 3,000 followers and you have 3,000 followers, well, maybe we need to share each other's stuff and build together. I think that's a great way. And people like talking to people, engaging with people who have a strong presence. So, hey, why not DM somebody for the good reasons? Hello, young people. Okay. For the good reasons, right? Don't slide in somebody's DM, not to go out, right? There's a time for that. I'm not, but sometimes you have to slide in people's DM because you say, hey, maybe you can intern, or hey, maybe you can contribute, or hey, you can say, I would love to write something, or hey, I have a unique perspective. Yes, 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders. There are brands, and I'll shut up after this. There are huge multi-million-dollar brands who have grown, who are building their success on you, right? They are banking that you will buy it, that you will retweet it, that you will eat it, that you will share it, that you will wear it, right? You, not even my generation, y'all, Z, right? So why not turn around and say, hey, y'all using me? Let me see if I can get some of this. Why not tag them and let them know how much you enjoy it, or how much you like it, or whatever. So I want to let you know, one, you are already valuable. Okay, that your story is already valuable, and there are big investors who believe it. You may not know it, but they believe it. Now you have to believe it. And when you believe it, you share that story and you strategically connect it with people who can advance your brand with you and who believe in that. So I'll just keep it there, but yeah.
Thank you. So thinking about how valuable young people are, right? And thinking about how they can use that value in order to propel them further, right? Whether that's a job, a career, college. So Ashley, when we're thinking about social media, and we know that employers at this point absolutely do check references, and part of that reference check can be checking social media. So it's about 70% of employers that were surveyed so that they check the applicant's social media when they're considering making an offer, right? And social media can also be checked for college admissions, not probably to the extent that it is checked for employment, but it can definitely be, checked. So when we're thinking about creating a positive image, really curating a brand for a young person, and thinking about these pathways, moving forward in life, are there any suggestions that you can give around that? What should be on your social media page that may make you attractive, as a brand, but a brand as a person, right? But as a brand, as in getting, having someone look at you positively for employment, or even for admissions into a college or program that you're interested in.
Yes, and I think that's a really great perspective as well, to use your social media platform, not only just to showcase who you are as a personal brand, but also for opportunities for engagement, whether that's college admission, whether that's a collaboration, networking with people, or finding a job. And some of the things that I would recommend you to think about, if you haven't already, if you've created a vision board, and think about where you want to go, specifically in terms of your professional goals, your long-term goals, all of that. And think about how comfortable are you with sharing that with the world? Because sometimes when you pour out a lot of personal information, you have to also be cognizant that you're sharing it with a wider audience. So be mindful. And even if you're not comfortable sharing all of those details as of yet, the perks of using social media platforms, again, is that you can control what you put out. And if you want to make your account private but have certain things public, then that's fine as well. So if you wanted to have your Instagram private, or to have the opportunity to showcase more of your professional skills, there are specific platforms that you can use to highlight that. And one of the things that I found that had helped me on social media as well is creating my own website. So one, it allowed me to learn a new skill. And also it allowed me to create and develop a consistent message all across platforms, because I don't know if you guys had ever experienced if there was a delay on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Why can't I see my content? Why can't I connect with my friends? You now own your own website. So if something were to crash, even if it's for a few hours, you still have your social media presence to reference, and you still own all of the information that you had put out and had it available to your audience. And I would also say, don't knock the opportunity to have virtual coffee chats with people as well. I found that community building is very important when you personalize those connections. So I have even had the opportunity to connect with people all across the globe for opportunities. People had reached out to me for collaborations and for jobs, specifically because the options that were available to us to connect, to have those personalized voice memos, those coffee chats, and also thinking of how you can use your social media presence to kind of comment on some of the industry news out updates that you see. So like if there's a college that you're interested in, or if there is a internship that you're interested in, you can share some of that feedback so that recruiters who are also looking at your profile can see, oh, these are some of the things that you're interested in. Maybe that's something that we can talk about. And don't be afraid to use your voice as well, because we're living in a time where normal is being defined differently to a number of people, and you now have the opportunity to reach out to as many people as you want, just compared to the amount of people that you just had like in your backyard.
Thank you. Anya, do you have a question for the panelists?
Yes, Mr. Stubbs, how can students create a pathway using social media content for people who they've never met, or for people who are going to be making important decisions about their future?
That's a very good question. I think the pathways can definitely, I think I mentioned it last time about the whole DM thing and exposing yourself to different stakeholders and things of that nature. I still think that rings true. I think you want to make a connection, find out what do you have in common, right? Where is the connection? Where is there overlap, right? I think even in my field with stakeholders, clients, external stakeholders, it's my job when I represent the firm is to find out the pain point, find out exactly where can I edge in at to see where I can connect with something that we have in common, or something that they need, or something that they're looking for, or engage them on something that they're interested in. And I think no matter whether you are an executive or just someone coming up the ranks, whatever stakeholder you're trying to engage, people want to know that they connect with you, that there's something in common with you. It doesn't matter if they're a Fortune 500 CEO, right? If you realize that they enjoy cooking and that Fortune 500 is always talking about cooking or whatever, and you did something on your page when you made brownies, whatever it is, it doesn't always have to be about the business or about the admissions or about the internship, right? People don't always want to know that you're engaging them because you want something. Sometimes it's about, do we have common ground somewhere? And a lot of times social media allows for that, for you to do it in a less pressured environment, to approach someone about something they may connect with you on. And then you can slide in and let them know you just don't want to talk about brownies, but you want to talk about the internship program. You want to discuss the scholarship and say, oh, by the way, ... But that initial connection should be authentic to you. Don't just go out, no, do a little research, understand what they like, what really drives them, where their interests. See, do I know something about that? Can I connect with them? Lead with that, and then come in with the, not the kill, but come in with the ask or what you're looking for or what you're thinking about. I think that's hopefully helpful. I know it has helped me even in my adult life that, hey, what do we have in common? Let's talk about that for a little bit. Let me like that post a little bit. And then maybe you say, you know, it was real cool that I saw you read that book. Honestly, my mom was just telling me about that book and she really enjoyed it too. And you know, and you may not know, but I'm also looking for blah, 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 something like that. It's not always that clean. Believe me, some people can be not nice on social media too. They can ignore you, but don't let that get you down. But no, the initial connection should be authentic. Go from there and then drive it, right? No one wants to meet someone in the real world. If I say, Anya, if I know I wanted something from Anya, I need Anya to write something for me for my blog. Anya seems like she's a great student. Write something for my blog about what y'all kids like today, right? And you never met me before. And I just said, Anya, write this for my blog. Anya's gonna be like, who are you? What? What? I don't even know you like that, right? So, but if I said, oh, Anya, weren't you on the 100 Black? You know, I know Malik. Yeah, that was really dope. It was a good time, wasn't it? Yeah, boom, boom, boom. You know, I really enjoyed you. And you know, I was thinking about, you feel me? So yeah. All right.
Thank you. And Jabari, thinking a little bit more about that, right? So, you know, as individuals, right, we are, you know, oftentimes we are our own quirky, interesting, our brand may not be similar to someone else's brand, right? And so when you are unique and you have unique skills and talents, or, you know, you're maybe not into some of the popular things that are out there and you have your own lane, right? How would you suggest that students or anyone best highlight their own unique personal brand as a brand for social media?
That's a really good question. And I think that in many ways, that's really what social media was built for, right? You know, I'm old enough to remember a world without social media. Some of us on this panel are, right? When you had interests that were very different from the folks around you, sometimes you kind of felt like an oddball. Well, in this current environment that we're in, you can find those people who have similar interests very easily. They don't need to live near you. They don't need to go to your school. They don't need to attend your spiritual institution. You can find those folks that have similar interests. And so one of the things that I would suggest that you do is find your clan, right? There's some things you really enjoy doing. Look for them on social media and become involved with what they're doing. When you do that, it'll advance the things you're interested in. And in some ways, it will allow you to really live past your limits. And that's a really, really important thing. I really always wanted to be a hiker. And I'm an urban guy, right? Grew up in New York City. You know, I tell people I want to go hiking and go camping. And some of my friends would be like, that's where Black people get killed. That's the kinds of things that they would say to me based on horror movies. And I would say, why would you think that? I didn't know anyone that wanted to do that. The internet allowed me to connect to those people. And so now I'm able to do some of those things. And I'll even say to you that because of those unique things that make up Jabari Osaze, and those unique things end up on social media, in many ways what happens is your eccentricities, your uniqueness allows you to create a better brand. And I think that that's the way that we should look at it now, right? If there are things you really enjoy doing, things you want to experience them. And when you're able to put those wonderful things on social media, when you have a picture of you standing at a scenic vista on the Appalachian Trail, now all of a sudden, your social media looks different than everyone around you. So lean into being quirky, lean into being unusual, because that's really what people will be interested in.
Thank you. So, you know, thinking a little bit about how all of us use social media, but, you know, there are definitely things that I have personally put up on social media that we've talked about it before that I regret. And I think that a lot of young people are using social media and maybe using what they assume are private pages, right? Or things that conversations or jokes that they may be sharing that they think that no one else is going to see, but they're a small friend group that they're sharing it with, right? But it's on social media. they're involved in TikTok challenges that may not be the most productive TikTok challenge, maybe something that they shouldn't be involved in. And so, thinking a little bit about, there are things as young people, there are things as older people that we do that, we may rethink down the line. So how would you suggest, and I'm throwing this question out to all the panelists, how would you suggest if, you've done some regrettable things on social media, and you may need to rehab your social media, how would you go about doing that? Is that advisable? What do you think about how you mitigate for some of the unfortunate mistakes you may have made on social media? Got you off the tough question. Jabari?
Well, first I should say that you should try to rehab it, right? You should try to create another image, another persona for yourself, particularly at the age that you're at. If you're in junior high school and high school, it is much more possible that you can actually do something radically different and rebrand yourself. When you get to a certain age, some of it is baked in the cake, right? So much of what Jabari Osaze is baked in the cake, and I've had to just accept it, right? There's some things that are different about me that some people are uncomfortable with. And I just have to say, look, I'm not for everyone, right? And be comfortable in my own skin enough to know that I'm not for everyone. Some people will just not like me. But as someone who is really beginning to look at the world of work, beginning to look at the collegiate world, really, you can rehab your experience. You can rehab your brand. Begin to think about what you're trying to promote and whether what you're promoting is actually in line with the direction you're looking to go into. Now, having said that, remember, when you put things online, there's a chance that it will remain. There's a chance that whatever you put online is somewhere. And that's a challenge. It really is a challenge. You'll get caught with, I critiqued Donald Trump very heavily, and a picture of me shaking his hand at the Urban League, by the way, surfaced. Boy, did people have fun with that. By the way, I just had fun with it too, right? I said he had money. I was shaking his hand, right? So it disappeared. Eventually, people just got off of it. But there's some things that you'll do that sometimes will stick with you. Don't be afraid to try to rebrand, but also be aware that the things that you put online can stay forever as well. Now, one more thing about Google. I've worked with young people, one young person in particular who had a really difficult life and ran away from home very early. She lived in an area around New York City where every interaction with the police is placed on their website. When she started looking for work, she would have these great interviews and then they would not call her back. And at one point she happened to call the place and she spoke to the interviewer, caught them off guard, and they said, Google yourself. By the way, I've been telling her for a while that she needs to control Google. Getting something removed from Google is hard. So what did she need to do? I told her to put everything online. All the things that really represent who she wanted to be, put it online. You're doing work in your church. Make sure that, why don't you convince them to put you in the newsletter? She did all the things that she could. And within 3 months, that item, which in my opinion should never have been online, she was 12. How could you put something about a child who was in jeopardy at 12 online? That's what they did in this municipality. She put lots of stuff online in LinkedIn, in Facebook, on her church newsletter, and it pushed that hit to the 3rd page in Google. No one mentions it anymore. So you can control your brand. And when things go wrong, you can fix them. And sometimes they can be difficult, but who said that life was going to be easy? Just get to work and you'll see that you'll actually get much further along in the goal that you're looking to accomplish.
Anya, did you have a question for the panelists?
Yes. Ms. Scott, what are some of the red flags to avoid on social media?
I think one of the biggest challenges and also learning moments with posting and having your content available is that you're human at the end of the day. Oftentimes, we'll find that one post did really well, or that one post didn't resonate with your audience the way that you were hoping it would. And some of the red flags that I would say to be cautious of are things that you're not going to feel comfortable with attached with your name. So thinking about if you are feeling emotional about a certain situation or something that's close to home to you, if you think back just for a few seconds that you're not okay with this content being available with your image and your personal brand associated with it, that's probably something that you don't want to comment on right in the moment. Probably think about it, reflect on it, personalize the message of how you would want to portray it, and think about when you want to post it. Another red flag I would say as well is reposting content that you're not 100% confident is credited information. So a lot of times there is numerous sources where we can find information, but that doesn't mean that it's from the appropriate source that we want to showcase and kind of spread that same narrative. So thinking about what you want to put out there, just make sure that you fact check it, that you, in the same way that when you're writing a paper, you want to cite whoever you're getting that information to, just so that it links back to, hey, this was something that I wanted to put out there. And this is the source that I got it from. I would say another red flag is to be mindful of how you're posting, specifically if you're sharing family memories, personal things that are identifiable to you, to be cognizant of what people are asking of you. Because sometimes when you're in community building and you're talking to people you don't know, sometimes you're unaware of people's intentions, right? So as we're thinking about networking, building with people, we want to go in with the best intentions, right? But sometimes we don't know what people may want from us. So still be cognizant, control what you put out there, and also be mindful of who you're building with, who you're connecting with, because a lot of times we see that they're quote unquote trolls on social media. They may have a picture of what you think they look like, but that's not really them. And sometimes you have to, while you're protecting your brand, protecting yourself as well, because whatever you put out into the metaverse or into the internet, people can put two and two together for certain clues about you, especially when thinking about red flags, certain challenges that you want to partake in. If you don't want to have that information for other people and oftentimes strangers to know about you, then just be cognizant of what you put into people's social media feeds, I would say.
Thank you. Damon, when you're thinking about, you're in the finance world and you're connecting with people on different platforms for various reasons, right? For your career, personally, creating your own interest and creating your own lane. And, you've really had an opportunity to build yourself in several different ways on social media. And so when you're looking at social media or interacting with people on social media, and as we talked about before, people can be mean, there are trolls. How do you control for that, or how do you handle that? What is the most appropriate way, right, in order to deal with someone who is trolling, someone who may be responding to your posts or things that you're interested in inappropriately? What would you say is the best way to go about handling that?
I mean, one, if it really is a troll, sometimes it is the power of a block button, right? I believe in blocking people. Sometimes you just have to block. Some people are not worth your time. Remember I told you about those 25 follower type people? They do nothing for you, okay? Now, there are other times you have to think through this, where yes, someone who disagrees with you and they're doing it appropriately, there is a time to engage them, right? Because it's very important, because I believe that good dialogue on social media can be really healthy, right? And you can really, persuade or dissuade or really impact the views of people. So I would say you have to determine, is this someone that is going to build up someone at the end of it? Like if someone was to read this thread of interaction, at the end of reading it, do they feel more enlightened? Do they feel more informed? Do they feel more encouraged? Do they feel more inspired? You know, or am I the joke? Or am I bullying? Am I bullying now? Or am I being bullied? Or, you know, so you have to determine, you know, what is the purpose of this interaction? Where is this going to go? There are times where on my faith and justice side of Damon, where I intentionally engage someone with a larger following, right? I remember I'm not gonna say names, but I remember I intentionally engage. I'm very thoughtful. I'm not a troll. I don't go around putting my nose in everyone's business. I can just keep my opinions to myself. But this one I thought was important because they had a platform. It was misinformation and it was around justice. So that made me feel like I had something to say. When I did say it, I got 250 likes on a comment in their own thread, right? That made me feel like, okay, this was strategic, this was beneficial. People say, you know what, you're right, started following me. I didn't embarrass that person. I just put out information and brought receipts. People enjoyed that and it lifted the conversation. It elevated that social media experience. And I think that's what you have to ask yourself. And what I'm about to say or engage with this person, does it elevate? Does it edify? Does it empower? Does it encourage? Does it inspire? Whether you agree or disagree? Or is it just a waste of time back and forth, you know, joking, bantering, where someone can screenshot and say, oh, look what they said, and now you got beef on social media. That's not worth it. That's not what you want. Bad vibes. So.
Speaking about beef on social media, right? Because, you know, when we're talking about being our authentic self, right? And we're talking about, you know, we advocate, right? And, you know, as people of color, you know, we may be advocating and have beliefs in things and topics and subjects and causes, right? That others may find for whatever reason to be offensive, or for whatever reason, because we may talk about Black Lives Matter or things like that on social media, right? That people it will invite a certain conversation onto your social media pages. If you're sharing images around social justice issues and people disagree with your stance on that social justice issue, it invites a certain conversation to your social media page. So how do you balance between that being your authentic self, authenticating, talking about the things that you really believe in when people may not agree with that, but also because you're young and, you know, you have these pathways that you want to take, whether it's to college, whether it's to a career, but you're talking about something that you're passionate about, that you're advocating for, that you believe in, that may rub some people on your social media the wrong way. How do you balance for that? Jabari, Ashley?
I truly believe that you're going to get to a point where some folks are not going to be happy with what you've said. If you have enough interaction on social media and your audience is large enough, there are going to be some times that people will get into it with you. And like Damon said, blocking is powerful, right? I like to tell people they're about to get blocked before I block them, because sometimes I've had an entire conversation and there's a point where it's no longer helpful. And I say, listen, I'm really considering that this conversation should end and I'm going to block you. And then they get blocked. Sometimes that's helpful even for people who are reading the conversation because they recognize that you have standards. So there are going to be some times that folks online are going to be unhappy with some things that you've said. Try your best, once again, to always have respectful dialogue. You can disagree. Disagreeing is fine. Have respectful dialogue. Maintain your standards with which you're going to continue conversations. And that's basically all you can really do. Now, I heard Damon and others even say that you should consider whether you should disagree with people based on sometimes their following, right? Remember I told you that there were those 24 videos, over 24 videos about me? I responded to some of them. For some of them, I mean, 3 people watch this. Why am I giving this person who doesn't like me a bigger platform? There's a term for what they're doing, clout chasing. They're trying to attack you so that you, with the bigger platform, actually give them part of your platform. Sometimes you just have to ignore the trolls. Let them maintain that warm space under the bridge and leave them alone, right? There are other times that you need to engage. And so I've engaged people who disagree with me. Some of them we've actually come to really helpful points where we understand each other, and those have been helpful. And other times they just go completely south. And so you have to just be prepared to defend your positions respectfully, maintain your standards for what respectable conversation is, and the rest hopefully will sort itself out in the wash. Now, keep in mind, if you've already been connecting with people that are in your network, people that see the world the way you do, you have allies. Sometimes before I even respond, half of the people that I am working with on social media have already responded for me. I don't even have to say anything. So those are things that you should be aware of. There are going to be some times that you're going to get into some disagreements. Disagreements are not negative. Just make sure that you're maintaining your brand as you disagree.
And Ashley, how have you had to control for that? Being Data Girl and your other interests, how have you had to control for advocating and the things that people may see that you're advocating for that may not be as popular with those that are following you?
I agree in terms of starting that conversation, but knowing healthy boundaries, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of informing somebody because they don't know, right? So there was a time when I posted something that was considered an unpopular opinion and someone didn't agree with me. And the fact that they didn't agree with me had showed me, okay, this is a different perspective. And I know, thinking from a business scope, the point of me being on social media is to educate, to inspire, and to motivate, right? So if everyone was always agreeing with me, I wouldn't be able to learn how to be a better person. I wouldn't learn how to take constructive criticism. So not to say that difference of opinions is necessarily a bad thing, as Jabari had mentioned before, but it's a new perspective of how to respond to something, because not everyone is going to think like you. We all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different cultures, and that's what makes us great. And that's what makes the conversation more fruitful, because if everyone is agreeing with you, then we don't have anybody to kind of stir the pot. Not that you always need to, right? But thinking about how you can do that in a way that is authentic as well. Because when you're having conversations with people that you know, people that you don't know, you're going to have times when people may quote unquote test you, try you. And why? It's because they want to see how you think. They want to see how you respond under pressure. And that's the opportunity for you to show them, yes, we don't agree on one specific thing, but I respect your opinion and I ask that you respect mine. And we had talked about different ways that you can mitigate that confrontation so that it doesn't escalate to something where now you don't feel safe, because social media allows us to build the community that we want to be surrounded by. And if at any point that feels threatened, that's when we have to be mindful of, okay, what space are we creating and what perception are we putting out there? Because ultimately, the same message that one person would get, somebody may not resonate with it as well. So just being mindful of how you do that. And sometimes it calls for taking the conversation offline, right? Like, hey, let's talk about this in private, because not everything needs to be back and forth, right? Not the wider group has to know every single part of the conversation. So that's okay as well. And if the other person doesn't agree with that, then so be it. We don't need to acknowledge it any more than it needs to. It had enough light. Now let's get back to the more important things and, find the ways that we can respectfully do so. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do in this environment, because as of right now, as I mentioned before, this is a new way of how we're communicating, right? Before it was in person, you can pick up on nonverbal communication. And now we're doing it through Skype, we're doing it through Zoom and different platforms. We're doing it through Discord, and now we're going to be doing it in Metaverse, right? And other forms of technology. So just being mindful of how you do that, because again, if you are a person of color, if you're not a person of color, woman, man, non-binary, people will always have a difference of opinions, and they may want to see how you respond to that. So don't be afraid, embrace it, because it's only going to help you be a better communicator.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And so I want to thank our panelists, Ashley Scott, Damon Stubbs, and Jabari Ozazi, for participating in this evening's program. And I really want to give a big shout out to the New York Urban League, who is our co-sponsor on this program. And I want to thank our Youth Leadership Apprentice for their participation tonight, for your very thoughtful questions, for being here and being attentive. We are going to wrap the program up now. There is some information in the chat around NCBW's upcoming programs. There is also information in the chat around the New York Urban League's upcoming program. So if you can please check that out. And we put earlier in the chat some information around how you can connect with our 3 panelists on social media. But if you guys want to mention that again, so that we have that on video on how our participants can connect with you on social media, if you could do that now, I'd appreciate it. Look, I got Damon stumped again. If you could just give some of your social media handles and how our participants can connect with you, or you can put the information in the chat so that we have that. So if they want to follow you.
Got you. On IG, I actually was writing it in the chat, but on IG, I'm a Harlem Gent, All right, on IG and on LinkedIn, you can just search me by Damon Stubbs. Okay, and that's it. But I'm gonna put my IG in the chat, and that'll be best.
Thank you.
My social
Handle.
media. Oh, go ahead.
No, please, please go ahead.
For everyone who doesn't know me by now, my name is Ashley Scott. On my social media handles, you can find me at Data Girl Ash. So that is across most social media platforms. My LinkedIn, a few people have the name Ashley Scott, but you will find a link in my bio for the social media platforms if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn.
I was saying before that I'm envying Damon's handle. That's a really good one. I've tried so many Harlem ones and they're all taken, right? Someone else has the same idea. He's probably one of them that does. But you'll find me on social media just under Jabari Osaze, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Meetup. So you'll see me on a lot of different platforms. I have a pretty large, I hesitate to even tell you because YouTube can get ugly sometimes, but I have a pretty large footprint on YouTube as well. And I have a website, jabariosaze.com. And so you'll see a lot. You'll be able to connect with me in that manner as well.
Thank you. So again, NCBW 100 Manhattan chapter thanks you. We put information in the chat, not only about our upcoming programs, but also we put information in the chat about donating to our organization. Donations help this organization and the Youth Leader Apprentice go a long way into continuing to support these programs and our advocacy efforts for Black women and Black girls. So that information is in the chat if you'd like to donate. And I want to thank everyone again for coming out this evening, and specifically a big thank you to our panelists for helping us put this together and getting this great information out there. And I want to wish you all a good night.
Thank you, everyone.